We're talking with Frank Fleming today, a satirist, an author, a blogger, all-around funny guy. You probably, if you follow him on social media, know him as LMAO. Did I get that right, Frank?
No, you did not. It's IMAO.
See, I always want it to be LMAO because I think I know what it stands for.
Yeah, that was a brash decision like 15 years ago or more now, where naming my blog. I thought instead of in your humble opinion, in your arrogant opinion, in my arrogant opinion, and I've kind of been stuck with it. No one seemed to know what it stands for.
I just always assumed it was laughing my ass off. But, you know, that's probably just me. All right, we jumped ahead of ourselves a little bit. You've been doing this a long time. You started your blog, if I've got this right, back in the early 2000s. So give us the thumbnail picture. How did you get into doing what you do, and how did it progress over the years? Because you've really expanded a lot.
Well, I'm what you call one of those war bloggers. It was like right after 9/11, a bunch of us blogs popped up, except it was 2002 I started my blog. I was 23 at the time. And it's like, well, I have some opinions. I want to talk about stuff, but at the same time, I'm only 23. I don't know anything. So I'm only going to do dumb opinions. And that I tried to make that my little area. It was my first big treatise was my plan for world peace involving nuking the moon.
Oh, right. Yes.
And so I kind of went through there. I've written funny stuff for a long time. I actually, back in high school, I had a column posted on how economic and political ideas should be tested on monkeys before they tried on people, because I think that's like that's something, it's overlooked. It's like everything else is very dangerous. You try it on, monkeys or something first, but politicians, they have all these crazy ideas, but they don't test them out first. So I thought it was pretty smart. And then I wrote some like humorous columns for like my college newspaper, but I just never thought about pursuing it until like, oh, blogs, you can just put stuff out there. And so started doing that.
Well, you and I started the same way basically, except I started considerably later in life. I was already past your age now when I first started blogging and moved on. You wrote for a while for an outlet that is one of our properties now at Salem, PJ Media. You've written for the New York Post, which is pretty good. Mm-hmm. But you've also done novels, which shocks me because I've tried and I've never been able to finish one. Give us a little background on that, and particularly your latest one, Hellbender, which I understand is about odd-looking lizards. Oh no, wrong Hellbender. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's not. It's a salamander. That's like a lizard, but wetter, as I think one of the character explains in the book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I've always wanted to write stories. That goes back even before political humor, and it's just kind of a longer time coming. Finally, I think back in like 2000, late 2014, early 2015, I had my first novel published, Super Ego, and then last year, second one, Side Quest, and Hellbender's my third one. So hope I know what I'm doing. This one's a little bit crazier than the other ones. I was kind of afraid. When it came out, people just say, well, this is a bunch of stupid nonsense. But I only had maybe like one or two reviews said that, and most people seem to really like it. This is much more satirical than the other two. A lot of people thought Side Quest was a comedy, but this one's a lot more satirical. It's kind of like post-apocalyptic area with a couple of losers. Satan's in it, maybe. And
there's a magic cube with cats on it. I have audio
bunnies.
version thanks to you, and
bunnies. You can see it on the cover made by Ethan Nicole of Axe Cop fame. He also works for the Babylon Bee. He did the cover for it. It's I've had such a hard time describing it. It's a lot of fun. It's fast-paced, fun book, and very funny. I think even funnier is the new Audible version. Had this guy Austin Rising, which is his real name, not like a revolutionary group I got to watch out for. And I think he did a great job on it. Made it even funnier.
I just started on it. Sadly, I was not able to get through the whole 12 hours since you sent it to me about 12 hours ago. But yeah, great voice. It's weird, which I like. Speaking of weird, and you already mentioned it, you're with the Babylon Bee, which I have heard described as the, shall we say, slightly more conservative version of the Onion, and I follow the Babylon Bee. And, I mean, you do a lot of tweeting. So let me ask you this. I talk more about actual news, not always political news. Like these days I'm into a lot of stuff about UFOs and things, but you can talk about the news. Anybody can, all the time. But you have to actually be creative. Like you have to be on in that gear all the time. Is that ever a grind?
It's a bit because the Babylon Bee, their space, and this is why I was a fan before I started writing them, is sort of Christian humor. And so they have some of it's kind of inside, like if you're, Christian goes to church every week, some of that humor is really funny. It's not like you're going to find anywhere else. But my brain's kind of broken. I've done a few of those articles, but mostly I come up with like the silly political angles. And that one's I've just been doing that so many years since, like I said, started the blog, over 15 years ago. That's just like I don't even have to think about it. Anytime I hear any news story, I'm automatically thinking the angles. But it's a lot of fun. They're a real fun group to work for. But it's gotten weird though. Like we had for a while, we had this big dust up with Snopes, which was just crazy. Did you hear about that?
No, please tell us.
Oh well, this started actually before I was working for them. They like Snopes came after them on Facebook, where they had like this article that no one thought was true. It was CNN buys industrial-sized washing machine to pre-spin the news.
Right.
It's like no one came to Snopes. Is this true? But they marked it as fake news, and then Facebook gave like Babylon Bee a warning, like we might have to not show your articles to people if you're putting falsehoods out there. And it's like, no, we're a satire site. We're very frank in that we do nothing but falsehoods. And but it didn't end there. They've a couple other times they corrected our stories, but made it sound like we're trying to trick people. And then a while ago, we thought we were done with that, but then they put out a story where it was about a study where they actually took our headlines and tried to survey people, like, do you think this is true? But it was really weird because it was well, for instance, I wrote a couple of the articles were ones I wrote. I wrote one that was the headline was Ilhan Omar. It was Ilhan Omar speaking. If Israel is so innocent, then why do they insist on being Jews? And,
right.
And then
allow me to apologize. I kind of misled the audience there. I thought you were referring to one specific item. I am familiar. I have seen a number of things, particularly when you mentioned Snopes, where people were fact-checking the Babylon Bee and nobody fact-checks the Onion, which struck me as rather odd. But in a way, on some sort of meta level, it seems like that makes what you were doing all the funnier, because making fun of the thing was funny. But then somebody coming and fact-checking you, in some ways, that just not only amplifies what you're doing more, but it makes it even funnier.
Well, yeah, you think that the easy way to do this, I think they did it for some Onion articles where they did have, Snopes did check them. It's just like, oh, this is from the Babylon Bee, they're satire. It's not true. That's what they do is satire. But they make it sound like we're one of those that's trying to get clicks and trick people to think it's real news. But like I said, yeah, the survey thing was crazy because they took we had that humorous article, like, if Israel's so innocent, then why do they insist on being Jews? But then they survey people with Representative Ilhan Omar said that being Jewish is an inherently hostile act, especially among those living in Israel, and then asked people if they thought that was true or not. So they completely took it out of context, made it not funny, and then were like surveying people. It's like, do you think this is a true statement? It was really bizarre.
Does that, do you think, tie into the very politics has always been divisive. I'm 60 years old. I can tell you it's not all that different now. But people do tend to think back to the good old days, and there was more comedy, not comedy, and people were somewhat more polite. But at this point, we've seen a lot of instances where particularly conservative folks have gone out and read a bunch of statements to college students and things, but attributed them to a Republican, but it was actually something a Democrat said. Yeah. And get their response, Barack Obama said so-and-so. Do you agree with that? Oh, I absolutely agree with that. And it turns out to be something that Ted Cruz said, that Barack Obama would never in a million years say. So does that damage the business of political satire?
Well, it's weird, yeah, the biases, and it's like we noticed. I don't think Snopes has ever fact checked one where we made fun of Trump, and it's always it's just crazy. It seemed like they went after us because we're attacking maybe targets they like, and that's always the I think some people get a little bit thin-skinned. I think a lot of times the left just isn't as used to it. Well, the right's kind of like, we've been doing this for years. Everybody makes fun of us all the time, and we're just kind of used to it. It's like to me, it's like all the crazy, like the people that say, like, I'm offended, like you're supposed to do something about it. It's like, well, try being a Christian. I'm offended by like 100 things a day. No one cares. It's like
exactly. You mentioned the T word now, so that brings me, when I first reached out to you and we were talking, deciding we were going to do this, I knew what the one question I wanted to ask you was. And I think this is a good point in the conversation to broach it. You create satire for a living. You take subjects that are in the zeitgeist, they're in the popular culture, people are talking about them, and you create things that are in many ways talking about actual facts, actual people that people will know, but you take it to an extreme level. You put a twist on it so it becomes ridiculous. That's sort of the definition, of doing satirical work. We are now living in this period of time from mid-summer of 2016 until, well, as we're recording this, the afternoon of Halloween 2019. How do you still have a job? Because haven't we gotten to the point where satire is almost, if people want to hear ridiculous, unbelievable things about political news, instead of going to you, to Babylon Bee, to your blog, anywhere, couldn't they just watch CNN?
Yeah, and this, and this is something a lot of people don't realize is how hard Trump satire is, because it's well, I've been saying this before. If like 10 years ago, you pitched, hey, I'm going to do a movie and in it Trump becomes president, and it's like, oh, that sounds funny. He goes, no, this is a drama. No one would buy that. That's a comedy premise. And that's our reality now. We're living inside a comedy, and you have to you can either go with the flow or you can try to be like, oh, this is serious and stuff, and then you end up like that, like the Dean from Animal House, where you just keep getting walked over, and that's what everybody wants to do is like, oh, they're constantly like, he photoshopped a dog, and they like, we have to analyze this. This is a doctored photo. Oh, he disgraced this Medal of Honor. It's just like, it's so silly, and it's like they're all being, the straight man in a comedy, and it's just they're the one. And it's not the position you want to be in. I think the thing with Trump is, and this I find a lot of times with political satire, my sweet spot is if I can just riff on something without making a political point, like just make it absurd. Like one of my favorite did, because, big thing with Trump was, he's going to build a wall. And I had a Babylon Bee article, anti-wall extremist, the Kool-Aid man, leads campaign against Trump. And it's just a fun, I'm not even sure what I'm making fun of, but I have like, he's this big, portray the Kool-Aid man as this big anti-wall activist, and Trump yelling at him like, my wall's made of steel. When you hit it, you're going to shatter and die. And, it's fun.
Well, the wall is one that I've done a lot of satire of my own about, certainly not as well as you, but my favorite, reference that I think of when I think of the wall is that it's not satire. It's not something things are making up. When people are competing in a primary, for example, it happened in 2016. It's happening now. on both sides. Somebody comes up with an idea, somebody has to one-up it, and then the next person has to do better because you're trying to please the base. And the wall was a big thing where, Trump wanted a wall, and I was waiting for somebody to come along and say, well, the next person wants a moat, the next person wants sharks in the moat with lasers on them, things like that. But that leads me into, I have a touchy question to ask you. I hope you are also, a good time having this conversation because you are a funny guy. I really enjoy your work. I have a serious question for you.
All right.
And it does involve Donald Trump. And it's been discussed by other people because you're in this end of the business. Maybe you're uniquely positioned to comment on it. Donald Trump does and says all sorts of things that most of his supporters, rally behind and say, whatever it is, that's great. And we'll come up with a reason why it's great. And people that don't like him as detractors will go, this is terrible. And we've heard explanations from that side ranging from the man is mentally deranged, or he actually knows what he's doing. He's just evil, and he's doing evil things. My question for you is, how much do you think maybe the work you do is what Donald Trump is doing? Because I've often wondered, is all of this intentional? Is he just trolling everybody and knowing that does he go out of his way to say things and propose things and do things strictly for the purpose of making sure that everybody lights their hair on fire? Is that what he's doing, or is he just really proposing serious policy and that's what he believes and everybody's taking one side or the other?
I don't know. I mean, the whole thing's kind of crazy for me because I always, I remember when I was a kid, I tried to make like cartoons and stuff. I think I remember making when I was like 12, I made a comic making fun of Trump, which is just, he was like a silly character that long ago. And I always had him filed in my head as he was this 90s billionaire novelty act. So in a way, it's like Trump becoming president to me almost feels like hearing that Pee Wee Herman became president. He's a cartoon character. He's not like a real person. Sorry, daughter walked in the room. Anyways, yeah, so it's almost like he's a cartoon character, not a real person. And it's a little bit crazy to take him seriously. And that's what you see so many people doing is trying it makes you absurd. Like when you're trying to make a Photoshop of a dog an impeachable offense. And it was so obviously Photoshopped, no one actually thought it wasn't Photoshopped, and they got to pretend he's like doctoring and fooling people. It's crazy.
Right. But, and this, I'm going to bear down on this a little bit if you don't mind, if you'll bear with me. And I just said bear twice in a row. Trump retweeted the picture someone else made of him putting a Medal of Honor on the dog.
Yeah.
And obviously he knew that he hadn't put a Medal of Honor on a dog. But do you think he did that just because he thought it was funny? Or do you think he did it because he was waiting for that to happen? And let me, before you answer, take this to the next level. You mentioned he's been kind of a character, a persona, long before he ran for office and was elected. Donald Trump was the host of The Apprentice. Donald Trump was a regular guest for years and years on the Howard Stern show and said just all sorts of shocking, amazing things. Is that the real person, or is he playing a character as president that he thinks will evoke the right responses to make him successful, or at least what he perceives as successful? Do you think there's a real Donald Trump underneath that is sitting there going, well, here's the policy we should probably be pursuing, and here's how we should do it, but I'm going to go ahead and make something sound bat crap crazy?
That's like the 8D chess theory. Like every time he does something seems stupid or crazy, it's like it's all part of some plan. I don't think so. I don't really see that. I think Trump is just Trump. He said, here's a photo of me putting a medal on a dog. It's funny. I'm going to share it. I mean, he's like the, the president, who's he's like a, basic, boomer with the email forwards and stuff. He'll believe anything gets sent, and he likes to share things that are funny. But it's entertaining at times. I love that time he did the, look at this photograph with the Nickelback.
Oh, that was a great one. Yeah.
Yeah, too bad that got taken down because that was hilarious. But it's like, I mean, that's kind of nice, and I just think that's something I appreciate about Trump. You never have to say to yourself, I wonder what Trump thinks about this. I wonder what he really thinks, because he's just out there and honest, which is, it's in a way it's horrible to see it, but in the other way it's like, I'd rather it be out there than all these other politicians who are just as absurd and just as awful, but they just protect us from that as much. And that's why, like I said, to me, the comparison is like Trump is like the Joker, and other politicians are like the Joker, but he puts flesh-colored makeup on so they look normal.
Okay. No, I think if I can share it with you, I come somewhere in between those two extremes. Yeah, people have tried to claim, oh, this is Donald Trump playing, fourth dimensional chess or whatever, and he's looking 20 steps down the board and he's got this all figured out. There's people at the other end that are like, no, these are brilliant policies. You may not like them, but there are a lot of people that support them. But I keep going back to the thing about The Apprentice, about Howard Stern. And I think he believes most, if not all, of what he's doing is the right thing to do. People can agree or disagree with that, obviously. But I do think he honed his craft doing Access Hollywood and radio shows and all that, and seeing what the response was. And he probably, this is just my opinion, finds most politicians kind of vanilla and boring and all doing the same thing all the time and, sugarcoating things well, we must be nice to everyone, but we have a difference of opinion. And he was out there with the Howard Stern crowd. And what really made headlines, what really drew a lot of listeners, was somebody talking like Howard Stern. And it just struck me that when he ran the campaign, he was like, I'm in a crowded field of people that are all doing the same thing. I need a different gig. I should be more like Howard Stern. So, as one of our common friends says all the time, prove me wrong.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think you got a point. I think really what helped him was he broke all the rules and no one knew what to do with it. I'd say going up into the 2016 election, I think I was one of those who were being, like I say, like the dean from Animal House was like, he can't do that. He's going to lose huge acting like that. Like, what a disgrace. And then he won. Is like, oh, I don't know anything. And
yeah,
it's like, I'm never going to make predictions again. I don't know what's going on. It's like, and at least, I'm one of those that didn't take it as seriously. So I was able to, enjoy the election night. Oh, this is crazy. This is fun. But yeah, he broke all the rules, and maybe that's good because I think we kind of got in a rut. I just don't. It doesn't look like we're getting out of it though. Looking at what's happening for 2020 and the candidates at the top. I mean, they all just seem like they're trying to go back the way things were before, but the way things were before is what led to Trump, and so it's not really. I don't think that's going to help us. I like Yang though; he's interesting, but I don't think he has much of a chance.
Well, I actually like Marianne Williamson because if we're going to elect anyone that's not Donald Trump, I was really desperately hoping it would be Marianne Williamson.
That would be a fun general election campaign.
I was going to say, you didn't pick her, so I'm a little disappointed in you, Frank, that you don't believe in the power of love and the ability to overcome the aliens that way. That's a story for another day. So let's again drag you off of the comedy circuit and give me your read on the electorate right now. We don't know who the nominee is going to be. It is probably going to be one of three at least 70-year-old white people.
Yeah.
White, straight, cisgender people, which doesn't make part of the Democratic base happy. The polls flop around all the time. And keeping in mind that we're doing this interview Halloween 2019, and we just saw the vote today that the impeachment inquiry in the House is moving forward. Personally, I don't happen to believe Donald Trump will be removed from office by the Senate, even if he is impeached, and he probably will be. And he's probably going to go on and be the nominee. What's your sense right now? Has he careened so far outside the boundaries of normality that middle section of the country that he needs to once again convince to march with him into next November won't stay with him anymore? Is he one and done?
I don't know. Like I said, it's like I've learned not to make predictions anymore. To me, it's like it's just as likely that Trump is going to lose huge as he's going to win huge in 2020, because it's just there's so many variables going on. And it's just his way to kind of bait the left into getting awful. It's like he puts the bar really low. It's like, if you want to win, you got to be better than me, and here's how low the bar is. And then they just limbo under it no matter how low it goes. And it's like, it's like they think this is an excuse to, like, unleash their id on everybody they hate, and they hate like half the country. And it's, people aren't going to vote for people who despise them. It doesn't matter how incompetent Trump is. I mean, this is especially for, like I said, for the Christians. It's like, Trump, there's a lot of hypocrisy in voting for Trump. But on the other hand, you have people who just like, who despise you and want to use the government against you and shut down your businesses. And it's just like, it's not much of a choice. So I don't know how it's going to shake out. I mean, he seems pretty terrible. At the same time, the economy is good. No one seems to spend much time thinking about it, though. It's crazy. I mean, going by the old rules, he's an incumbent with a good economy. He has a better than half chance of getting reelected.
Could be. Before we get to the outro stuff, I'm going to toss my last question I had jotted down for you. Let's forget about Donald Trump for a moment and look at the people that are, let's narrow it down to what you think maybe the top 7 or 8 are that still could conceivably have a chance to be the Democratic nominee. We have the top 3, obviously, Biden, Harris, Sanders, Warren, maybe Pete Buttigieg. There's a few more that are at least not down below 3%. There's a handful of them. If one of the Democrats has to win, who do you see as the best possible provider of material for you in what you do? I don't mean who would be the best president, who has the best policies. Who provides the most fodder for you starting in January of 2021?
I mean, Biden, it feels like we've mined most of the Biden humor. Elizabeth Warren just constantly walks into rakes, so I think she'd be kind of fun. Bernie Sanders, it's like he's another one who just like seems like a cartoon character already, and so it's a little bit more difficult to do the humor with him because it's just he's absurd as is. Buttigieg, you said his name. I've never actually heard it pronounced.
Buttigieg.
Buttigieg, yeah, he Alfred E. Newman. That was another time Trump was legitimately funny, and I did not trust that guy because he said he did not know who Alfred E. Newman was, and he's like 2 years younger than me. It's like everybody knows, my age knows who Alfred E. Newman is. Yeah, you have to be careful there. And then let's see, who are the other big ones? Well, everybody likes making fun of Kamala Harris, the cop.
Right.
She's one of those like who's the straight-laced person who gets a pie in the face. And it's always funny because they don't have a sense of humor.
That's pretty much the top rank. You have just covered the ones that, unless there is a dramatic shift or 5 people die, you've covered the ones. So do you have a favorite amongst there? Is it Bernie, or is it like too hard to make fun of Bernie because it's so easy? Or do you worry about Kamala Harris because it's challenging to make fun of an African American, or not African, but a black female, because then you got the whole, you're a racist and all that. I mean, who do you want to be the target for satire?
If I had to choose for satire, I think it's Elizabeth Warren. I've already had a lot of fun making fun of her, and I feel like she's just going to continue to provide a lot of material because who's like thinks she's so smart and has these great plans, and she's just an idiot and doesn't like all her plans. It's like, it's like the plan's all about people want this, so I'll give it to you, and I will tax the rich for it. It's like, oh, that's genius. Thank you. No one's come up with that.
Never heard that before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminds me, actually, there's an article, like you mentioned, people got to one up. I did a Babylon Bee article. 6-year-old saying, why don't we just give everything away for free? Surges to top of Democratic polls. Because it's just, that's the mentality. It's just like, oh, I'll give you this, I'll give you a college, and you don't have to pay for this. And it's so childish, but I think it's something we can keep making fun of.
It's a joke I make all the time, and part of it's actually very real, but the other part is it's funnier because people will fall for that all the time. All right, Frank, I want to not take up your entire day. We've hit the half-hour mark, and I want to thank you for being a guest. And before we go, and I will put this in the show notes when we post the interview, where can people find you? Where can they find your latest book? Is there anything else that you want to pitch that you have either ongoing now or coming up that people should be aware of?
Well, you can find me on Twitter. Look for Frank J. Fleming. You can also go to frankjfleming.com. It's got linked to all my books. Of course, you can get Hellbender at Amazon and at Audible. It's I personally say it's the greatest novel ever. I read Brothers Karamazov, and mine's much funnier. Let's see, and also, Babylon Bee.
All right. That was Frank Fleming. Frank, thanks for joining us, and I hope everybody goes and checks you out, and thanks for giving us your time today.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for having me.